Okay, it's 2 p.m. Friday, April 10, 2026. After Easter, so Christmas is coming soon. Was that? Yeah, it's over. After Easter, the next important thing, Christmas. So I call the meeting of the Land Use Working Group to order, and first we do a roll call on attendance. I see a few are online, and let's test that if they actually also hear us. That will be the test. You make Rob co-host.
Yeah. All right, Rob is co-host.
Rob, you should be able to unmute yourself. Are you available? Are you here?
Standard key.
Rob? He should be.
Oh, I'm here. It works now. Thank you.
You're here. Keith, you should be able to unmute now. You're here?
Present.
Okay, Paul Böhm. Here. Matt Boger.
Here.
Mary Hartman. Here. David Long.
Here.
Tracy Morano was potential. I don't see her online. Mark Martinez. No. Linda Miller.
Here.
And Sven Weber here. We have a forum. Let's go to public comments. Last time we gave a lot of room to public comments. This time we have to go back to what our name says, that we are a working group, so we have to work. So we will try to keep the public comments to a total of 10 minutes maximum and 2 minutes per speaker. And Paul volunteered to be the timekeeper. And also I would encourage, if you already made your point and you don't have a new point from last week, just we don't need to repeat. We heard you all. We will take it in. We will document what we heard. We also received letters. Very good, because it also helps to further document the feedback. So just, I would appreciate if you focus on new or additional information we haven't heard yet. So any public comments? Yeah.
Can you give us?
You're using the
Oh, we don't.
You don't need a map. Yeah.
And you gave us 62 Prescott Road. Very briefly, last week you practically promised us that Beetle Springfields would be taken off consideration for public works at least, and I would appreciate it if you would formalize that promise in some way. I know it wasn't a formal promise, it was a general promise. We were told to calm down, we were told to not to get excited. So I think there were a lot of reasons why, besides the given reasons about the field itself, there were procedural reasons, there were all sorts of reasons given and taken. So so that needs to be formalized.
Any other comments?
Brian Windmiller, 65 Arrowhead Road. I had emailed co-chair Weber, but I didn't receive a response to. I certainly embarrassed Weber. A few questions. One is, will the draft report of the land use working group that assesses the different sites, will that be sent to the selectmen as is, or is that going to be amended? And will the public be able to see any amendments that are made?
Okay, just for clarification, that first phase one report was already presented when end of February, was it? That was in the last Monday of February. And the phase two is now to reconcile conflicting information in there, to add new information, and there will be a final report which is public. And by the way, that the subgroup reports and everything were public even before. There was nothing going behind closed doors. Just
I'm not implying
clear. And everyone has access to this information. Yeah.
Because as I pointed out, and documented, there's a rather gross error in that draft report.
Yeah, we take that and we will make any adjustments as needed.
Right,
Yeah.
and likewise, omissions that are really significant are at the core of why you're getting a lot of public input about one site in particular, about the 509 Bedford Road. So I asked, and I detailed those in the email, so I asked that those omissions be considered, and if a working group deems it suitable, they be included in the final report. Thank you.
So sorry, I must have always not seen that email and I will look for it. Sorry, I didn't respond.
Adrian Peterson, 253 Peter Spring Road. Not gonna repeat anything from last time. Actually, this is probably a little more of a friendly note for the group. I want to say that I think we've been given an almost impossible task. And I don't say that lightly. Why do I say that? You're trying to find a home for DPW. And no residential neighborhood is going close to it because of the site of it, potential sound from it, the incremental traffic from it. And that's why when I looked at towns like Acton, Lincoln, Bedford, Burlington, Sudbury, Wayland, they are either in isolated sites or they're in commercial sites, kind of like where Keys Road is all right now. But they're not near neighborhoods. And that's why I think you've given a pretty impossible task. It's good to have a backup plan on paper. I think in real life, it's a totally different story. You have neighbors of the town that you have to contend with. And I think it just makes it all that more important for the focus, direction, and energy of the group to be looking at a successful negotiation with MCI and the town of Concord, with the state. I mean, I just don't see it back. It's taken 14 years to see a path forward just with MCI. We didn't find a place in 14 years. There's not gonna be a place if it's not MCI Concord. It's just gonna invite somebody to get legal representation and hang it up in court for the next 5 or 10 years and hurt the town some more. So again, I appreciate what the group does. I just think you've been given a really tough thing to try to do. And I really only see one place on paper, and that's MCI Concord. Anything else, I think we're just, I don't want to say fooling ourselves, but it's a big uphill battle. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
6 minutes. Less than 6 minutes.
My name's Paul Ruhlman, 101 Peter Spring Road. And I've lived on Peter Spring Road for 38 years. And I've got to know Joe Palumbo when he farmed that land. And when he no longer farmed it, Hutchins Farm took it over. And I've witnessed their spending 3 years to increase the fertility of that soil and encouraging pollinators and wildlife. And I think it's become a real treasure for the town, especially for sustainability and having a ecological use of the land. So I'm very much in favor of maintaining it as agricultural land. So I hope I'm not repeating what other people have said, but thank you.
Thank you. Other public comments? There's one hand, I need another glasses for this.
I asked them to unmute.
Where's the hand? It's gone.
Yeah, now they're gone.
They're gone. Okay. With that, closing the public comments, going to approve the meeting minutes of the last meeting. Any comments to the meeting minutes? Any adjustments? No? Do I hear a motion to approve?
Move to approve the minutes of March 13, 2026.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Do the roll call, Rob Almeida,
Yes.
Keith Bergman,
Yes.
Paul Byrne. Yes. Matt Boger,
Yes.
Mary Hartman.
Yes.
Peter Long,
Yes.
Linda Miller,
Yes.
Sven Weber, yes. Herewith approved. All right, are you set up to share your screen or should I screen?
Sorry, I assumed you.
I can do that. I'm set up for that. So, while I'm doing this, so we're going to the work plan for, phase 2, and there are also some changes where we have to update everyone on the, changes to our, where is the presenter? Here. So you want to quickly go through the timeline and then we talk about the changes and next steps.
Sure, and this will be helpful, I think, for the members of the audience, both with us in person and over Zoom. So we were tasked with completing our work in a period of 1 year. We initiated the project in July of 2025, you'll see with the very first item on the timeline, and then hoping to complete in July of this year. And the steps that took place between the launch and where we are now is that we spent most of the summer visiting sites, talking to town staff, becoming familiar with the different public facilities that the town owns and operates and so forth. And then based on that preliminary work, we developed our work plan. And I mean, this graphic summarizes, I think, a lot of steps that are not necessarily viewable on screen. But basically, there were 2 phases. The first phase, which we worked on between September of last year and January of this year, we've called the subgroup reports. And this is where the committee broke into groups of 3. And we have 3 people working on municipal consolidation, 3 people working on public works, and 3 people working on police and fire. And those reports are the ones that form the appendices to the report that was sent to the select board in February of this year. And in particular, one of those reports, I believe, is, sort of well documented and circulated amongst members of the community with regard to public works. So that's the phase 1 work. And I think Sven tried to make clear that phase 1 report was really just bringing the work of those 3 groups together. We ourselves haven't had much time yet to be able to discuss in a working group setting how we feel about different properties on the list and so forth, in part because we're a working group, but we're constrained by open meeting law. So the only time we can actually work together is in these meetings. So we are having those discussions. We're calling it reconciling, sort of just going from group A to group B to group C to try to figure out where we are. So that's the culmination of phase 1, was that report and those reports that you saw from the subgroups with a short summary report that fronted it. That went to the select board, and now we're in what we're calling phase 2, which has the little sort of red square around it. And that's like.
Because hate to interrupt, apropos of the previous discussion, the report that was submitted, cover report with the pieces, we consider that a draft phase 1 report.
Yes,
So that, because that's not on the timeline.
well, it's a report from phase 1, yes.
Right, I just, to avoid confusion, probably would indicate that there was that, whatever we want to call it, initial report.
We call it the initial report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the only report that is on this is the draft report and final report from the entire process, which are the last 2.
Correct, I just, I would just, for posterity, I would just add that to this.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, and then where we are now is the full group report. This is highlighted with the red square. And this is where we are bringing the work of these 3 subgroups together and making some recommendations to the select board. These are, of course, non-binding recommendations. This is where I think some of the feedback that we've been getting will be incorporated into this next step. Importantly, and I think Sven's about to turn to a slide regarding phase 2, is that we've had a bit of an adjustment of our charge from the select board, which speaks to, I think, one member of the audience called it a very difficult task. It is indeed a difficult task, so we had to right size the charge a little bit. But the idea is that we hope to have a draft report in May or June of this year, which, by the way, now is not thinking about Christmas spend, it's actually next month. Right? So next month then with a final report, the draft report will be made available for everybody to see. We'll bring it here, everybody can comment, and then a final report to the select board in 26.
Yeah, I just jumped to the next slide is, so last Monday, the select board refined the deliverables for the land use working group for phase 2. In the original charter, it was a very kind of a vague sentence, just a one sentence that you could have put everything in and you wanted. And given we're now 9+ months into the process, I think it was clear for the select board that what they would expect from us as a deliverable and as a next step in phase 2. So this is here exactly out of the text that was now in the charter for everyone to see. So phase 1 will first integrate the outputs across the subcommittees, identify and describe areas of alignment and conflict, and documenting the range of plausible approaches within each category, where including and shortlist best aligned approaches where there is a clear alignment. So just that brings a lot of these things together. Then second, developing potential next steps for select board consideration by compiling a consolidated list of actions, decisions, and analyses needed to advance the work beyond phase 2. So after July, when we are all going on vacation, someone needs to pick it up, and it should be our list of recommendations where we hand it over to the select board and they have a busy summer. Then 3, compiling a preliminary inventory of surplus town-owned property organized by agreed upon categories to support consistent evaluation and decision making, including later analysis of appropriate land uses for parcels identified as potentially suitable for disposition. So beyond the roughly 35 main parcels we looked at in phase 1A, we don't need all of them. So you have to have kind of a picture of what is our thinking of the one that are not touched by phase 1 recommendations. But there are over 100, a lot of small parcels all across town. About half of them are spoken for, cannot be used, wetland and so on. But there are about 50 where you can group them in a bunch of little residential lots here, a bunch of things here or there, and group them and see is there any kind of high level recommendation, like, I don't know, 15 potential parcels residential that could be used for housing, for a Habitat for Humanity project or whatever. But not really making a huge fuss out of it, but making it clear and have a comprehensive overview about all the different properties that are spread across town. So that is now the phase 2 approach. And you want to quickly touch on this? And then we can
I have a
start.
question.
Yes.
Hi, it's Keith Bergman, just with a question. Looking back at what our initial charge was, the select board had defined phase 1 differently than what it's than we're reporting out here. Phase 1 was to look at consolidation, public for offices, public works, police and fire, and then come to recommendations on that. That was phase 1. Phase 2 then was will address other potential uses, including commercial development, housing, and recreation open space. So since so it sounds like our mission has been no longer references commercial and housing and open space. Is that correct? I said it says agreed upon categories. I mean, who agreed upon what?
So this one agreed upon would be between us, where we define the categories. I still think we should have categories like open space, commercial, housing, and so on. And we have to most likely in the next meeting go through the categories we would like to see.
Right, but it must, since these are, I'm guessing, the select board's words that are up on this phrase. So do they no longer agree on commercial and housing and open space is what we're as among what we're getting at? They're not even worth mentioning.
Just kind of, I view that embedded in number 3 here. It's not specific, but this is where we're looking at the land, that's quote unquote surplus land, and talking about multiple uses. I think we could specify those, but I think housing, commercial use, other uses are sort of embedded in my mind in item 3 there. I don't know.
Yeah, they were not, they were stated specifically in our original charge, and it's why I got on the land use working group representing housing interests, but we've never talked about housing, and now it's not even one of the mandatory things for us to talk about. So thank you.
Actually, Keith, we did talk about housing when we did the municipal consolidation because subgroup, because a lot of our quantification of different scenarios involved an assumption that the land would be used for housing at different zoning levels. So we did think about housing, at least in that space.
And if I can jump in as well, Keith and I have certainly sort of gone back and forth on this issue. Upon my first reading of the charge back in July of last year, it was my sense that it would be very difficult, in fact, to address all of these different land use categories within a year with no consulting help, with very little in-house data available to us, and working within the constraints of open meeting law. So would have been very, very difficult to do some sort of town-wide planning analysis on commercial housing, open space was not really feasible within the initial charge. I'm not suggesting that these aren't important questions, Keith, but I think I would call them phase 3 concerns to start looking at parcels that lay outside of the initial set that are currently used for public facilities, expands the scope of our work to a point where it was simply not at all doable within a year. And I would say that following up on Mary's comment, we certainly have considered housing, and we've also considered commercial uses in the context of alternative uses for town-owned sites where public facilities currently sit. So I think the constraint is that we've really been looking at town-owned sites where public facilities currently sit, and then maybe some downstream issues from those, rather than looking at, and even, I'll be honest, Sven and I have gone back and forth. I don't even love number 3, right? I think number 3 I think that's another big piece of work. Identifying additional properties, but then thinking about how we might categorize them for open space and housing and so forth. That sounds like a master planning exercise. It sounds like zoning. And I think that that's very difficult to do in this context. So I think, Keith, if we can think about it as critical questions, I mean, you always ask great questions, but I think of them as almost like a phase 3, if you will. That this is something that the town needs to be undertaking in terms of grander master planning exercise. And I believe that the select board is interested in pursuing those kinds of projects and has through town warrant started to set aside some money for these very important questions and exercises. But I want to be very clear and circumspect about what it is we are capable of doing reasonably by the end of July.
And I just
Thank you. Yeah, if I could, thank you for that. I think that's a reasonable answer for us to say at the end of our life as the land use working group. And it will be for another entity, I think, to take up to take the information that's been, I think, masterfully put together in this process, but it will be for someone else to pick it up and do something with it. And the specific question I have is, there are a lot of discussions that we know nothing about between the town and the state. And I keep hearing with respect to MCI Concord that somehow there's some notion that housing that doesn't go at MCI Concord where the governor wants it, where it's her top priority, might instead go somewhere else. And I'm just wondering where else if the town in its negotiations with the state has identified where else, and if they could tell us where.
Yeah, so let's go through these different properties and different options when we go through our working parcel by parcel. And I think some of these will come to a natural answer, yeah.
Well, I just want to comment that, to Mary's point, we've taken not discussing the negotiations, but we've taken a really good first conceptual stab at those surplus properties and what housing in particular can be accommodated there. But I do have a question, somewhere between you and a deputy town manager. There's a analysis going on right now for yield analysis at certain properties. Is that information going to be integrated into our step 3? Because that's some specific information on yield, the value of those properties and different zoning.
If we get information while we are seated, we should build it in.
Okay, I just want to
It's
mention
a
that.
question of timing. You're looking for that yield analysis.
Yeah, and I don't know what the timing is, but it would be beneficial to kind
So-
of put those two together.
If it's 2 minutes before we release the final report, perhaps not.
I would agree.
Okay,
We got it.
so I think that maps out a little bit our task, and just for everyone on this slide, just one highlight is we are working towards the final, as said before, on the question, is to the final report. And this is then a group exercise, and we will see is in the end, we all either miraculously have the same recommendations and it all falls together, or we might have to have a discussion on the one or the other property. But the final report should be a vote of the group, if the group as such is behind the final report. Yeah, so far we only did interim reports. So let's now go to a little bit our working session we have. How do you want to do it? Do you want to monitor it live when we talk about the different things?
I'm in the file, so I can make changes live, or we can use the Excel file.
So I have an Excel file.
Why don't we
Can you share, or should I share? I have, or,
I am not on the Zoom call, so it's.
oh, you cannot, so I
Yeah.
can.
I think it might be easier if you do it.
So in the agenda and in the material minutes, so just one of the big things was all these properties were listed as an appendix to the agenda. Is a list where we go structurally through step by step and saying, this is at least what Judith and I read out of the subgroup reports were preliminary findings out of the subgroups. Are we all on the same boat? Are we not? Did we receive additional information? Is there conflicting information on that property? What are things that need to be addressed when there's a follow-up work? There's certain properties that are not only this one we just discussed, but others that have a higher attention potential for the community, so that we really make sure that we're just get a common sense property by property. So let me share that list here. You're in now?
Yeah.
Okay, then because then you can, you have to.
Have to make you a cover sheet. You're all set.
Okay. So. You share? So while she's putting up to the first, we categorize it into 3 categories. Category one is town-owned properties that were addressed in phase 1 recommendation. Category 2 were town-owned properties not addressed in phase 1 recommendation. Not addressed in phase 1 recommendations because it's unlikely to change in use. And then category 3 are town-owned and other properties identified in phase 1 recommendations requiring further discussion in phase 2 and by select board. So there's already some grouping, and we hope we can get through some of this very quick.
Yep.
And then focus on the ones where we have longer discussions potentially. So
Figure out if there's any way I can make it slightly larger for the folks in the room, but I think if I do so, I compromise the visibility for the folks online. Do we have any hard copies that we can possibly? I think we both have.
I can.
Oh, so a couple people printed one?
Yeah, I can.
All right.
Too.
Yeah, so I have
I can
here.
zoom in if anybody needs to. see
Yeah, have
it.
you zoom in and show mainly first, 1, 2, 3, first 4
Okay.
columns, and then it's better to see.
Well, and maybe if we said, because I think what's active here is the first 4 columns, but just so everybody knows, we have the parcel ID, we have the owner, we have the area, built area and year opened. And so if anybody would like to see that either on, you know, online or so forth, I think I could maybe then bring it back down. Does that help a little bit? Yeah.
Okay, so we have, let's start here, public safety, the Walden Street, and this is just the shed is right underneath it, so in the end, these are the 2 properties currently, so far the understanding seems to be, that, the options are to convert, this. Convert it to a fire substation, or just convert it to a police headquarters only. To potentially you keep or use it for other town use, or to sell if we build new. So it needs study to determine feasibility of renovation, otherwise new construction. So the background on that was in the consolidation, in the fire and police group is we had not clear data. Is it too expensive to renovate and adjust to a fire substation or police headquarters to the current needs or not? So there's further study needed is what would be the cost of renovating that building and bring it to what the needs what the needs are, or do we need to rebuild if we need to build somewhere and rebuild, this could be a potential surplus property, so therefore this is option 4 or option 3 in a surplus scenario. Yeah.
Just a quick question, are there existing ongoing studies of any of these properties? And if so, you know, do we have a list of those? Or-
So I think just one way of thinking about these properties as we work through them is that they're all addressed in one of the subgroup reports. So all of these properties
External.
The
Yeah.
external studies.
in the subgroup report for police and fire, and for all of us, like it's, you know, we're now going back 2 months and trying to remember what are in very long reports. But in the subgroup report for police and fire, it states that we are limited with respect to what we understand about the conditions of the building. We are limited with respect to the reuse of some of these sites because of constraints on the developable area of the site, wetlands and so forth. And we also don't know what size of a new building we would need. So all of the public safety recommendations that we're gonna see in this long list are pending a more detailed study to be undertaken as part of a new committee that will be looking explicitly at public safety buildings in town. And there are consultants that do this kind of work, and they do this kind of work based on response times and so forth, so the answer is no.
So the generally is that for this building specifically and for other buildings, that there will be consultant hired to go through this and compare to the needs analysis that was done before and see what could be done. So the building as such is to be kind of like two buildings glued together. One side is police, the other is fire. And there are a lot of inefficiencies in it. And if you do that, you have to do significant renovations on that building. And for that is Article 12, I think is important.
Exactly, can I add to
Yeah.
that? So, yes, there are no studies right now, and part of Article 12 is asking for funds to have these type of studies done. And it's earmarked about $350,000 for this particular category, public safety.
Okay, but so in terms of our discussion, yes, we've already determined that additional studies and the nature of those studies will be done. So it would seem to me there's no need really to have a discussion.
So there's no.
Because-
Either.
Why should we get ahead of studies to be done?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's why I was a little
the
I
reconciliation.
just have a quick question. The reference to new construction, was that either on this site or elsewhere? So the two possibilities within the new construction. Yeah, okay.
I think just to be refreshed, the idea of walking through this.
Yeah,
Cell, row by row is, currently what's in the fourth column here is the current recommendation of the subgroup. And all of these are sort of laid out in the reports, and it might be hard for us to all remember the rationale behind each one of them. But our point now is to simply say, yes, this was the recommendation of the subgroup. Do we agree with it or not agree with it? And
Or
if
is
we
there
agree
any
with it,
other
we move on
conflict,
to it.
the things we heard from the public, anything that suddenly would change our mind on this? Yeah. Okay, I think that is,
Ken, I'm
Yeah.
sorry to,
yeah, it's the first one.
are we going to try and prioritize what be studied? No.
No, at the moment, you just
Let's move through.
We're just trying to
reconcile the
identify
finding.
conflicts across the three groups.
Okay.
So line 2 is the shed on the same campus, so that belongs together. Line 3 is the West Concord fire station. To remind, the subgroup concluded that it's completely not fulfilling its purpose because of size and needs on West Concord. And the conclusion of the subgroup was that there is a need to rebuild a fire station in West Concord, and when we do that, rebuild it as a headquarter. It could be that perhaps the police, when you build a larger headquarter and you're successful to acquire land around the current position or land somewhere else, that could be big enough to house the police, so therefore the option to possibly fire police headquarter combined. But I think the first one was very focused on just a new fire headquarter of in West Concord. And it will, more than likely, it will require additional land acquisition, either near the current site or somewhere else. And that is option 4, build somewhere else. If it's built somewhere else, that property would be surplus property. But my understanding so far from the absolute front runner in the group was rebuild a new fire station as a headquarter at the current location, assuming town would be successful acquiring its property near that current location.
So number 4 presents a little bit of a dilemma because there could be a potential conflict in there by leaving it vague. I'm just wondering, given the preference to locate or rebuild or acquire in the vicinity, do we still need number 4?
So
Because we don't know where that land would be.
I do think it needs to be in there.
Yeah.
Because, so fire stations, not unlike earlier comments about public works, and police stations, but to a lesser degree, present externalities to neighborhoods, and so relocating them or relocating them are always tricky. And in the case of West Concord, many of the negative externalities of the existing fire station are already built into the expectations of the adjacent land uses. So in many ways, it's much, much easier to try and work with the existing site if we can. Granted, it's very small, so we have to think about acquisition. But if that doesn't work out, we still need a fire station somewhere in West Concord, and we're gonna have to figure that out. So I think it needs to stay on because we don't know. If, for example, if we're unable to successfully acquire the additional land, then that site's too small to do anything on, right? So then we're looking at another site.
I agree. I just flagged it as a potential. We're talking about potential conflicts here. It's a potential future conflict if we go to that option. And we open up potential conflicts at locations to be determined. So
I think in almost every category, there's going to be if this doesn't work out, then we've got, a more complicated issue. When I think maybe one way I was thinking about Linda, so, Linda has a brilliant mind for clarity. So I'm trying to think about how we can give instructions that are more clear. I think that it's helpful if the working group, and let me know what you think about this, guys, but look at the list of options. If those options are in line with the ones that we have already discussed in the subgroups, then thumbs up. Is there an option that you think needs to come off the list? And is there an option that you think needs to be added? to the
That's a good
list?
process.
That's the way I would look at it, rather than going over
Yes.
options that I think. we were discussed in detail. Does that make sense?
It
All right, if Linda says yes, then I'm good.
So I keep option 4 on there, but just flag that since we're talking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Start out potential company.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be an option for like that in a bunch of places.
Yeah, but it's a potential challenge, yeah.
It is.
Okay, former MCI, so we did not reinvent the work on the MCI from the MCI working group. We did not reinvent that. We were focusing here from the public works subgroup perspective. And correct me if I'm wrong on that one, on the wastewater treatment facility as a main target to say that that's an essential infrastructure for Concord. So to get that, potentially expand the work, the footprint for the new sand beds to achieve additional capacity for the wastewater treatment facility. And with the a guideline for the 300 foot setback, is there potential be part of all of DPW facilities there? So that was the main focus on this. And this is part of the negotiations with DCAM. And it's my understanding it's also part of the charter, I think. Is it part of the charter of the new group the select board is setting up?
To do, on the MCI master plan?
Yeah, that's right. Public Works, either parts or
Yes.
all of it gets room there.
Yes.
Yeah,
For this particular category, first of all, it's important to understand that we don't own the land.
Yeah.
So we have a list of town lands, but we don't own this land. But I think it's important to keep it in here, because of the touch point with DPW, and as one of our public commenters mentioned, this is something that we should be critically focused on as a site for DPW. The wastewater treatment plant, I'm not sure was part of the charter of this group. But I want to go back to something I thought I heard you say, which is if we go through these and we say, do we agree with this? Is this how when we read the subcommittee reports, if we agreed with this, let's just go, right? And if not, stop and otherwise,
Yeah.
we're gonna spend a lot of time. So how about that for a process?
yeah. Okay,
Well, I think Linda has a question.
I just would like to say that I think, the conflict here, may be related to what we haven't talked about, which is housing. And I think that, the sense, and I'm not representing, I am representing the old, charge, that the community needs to understand that the more, public works capacity we load onto this property, the, with the demands that we have for housing from the state, that will probably increase the required density on that property.
Not necessarily.
For funding, I mean,
If there was a way that we could swap out property somewhere else in.
well, then we need to put some, that's
But
somewhere
that's-
else in.
But
here
you see,
as
the
well.
thing is I think that's why I was earlier saying I'm not sure it should be here because we don't own that land.
Okay.
You're right, so our role as the land use working group is to find a home for DPW. So the only way I find that this belongs in this schedule that we have is for DPW. If by putting DPW there, it means that we would either have denser or less housing there, that's a negotiation between the town and DCAM and outside the work of this group.
but we have in here the part of things
Go
to
ahead.
free up Kais Road sites. So I think this relates to the
So I think,
question
yeah,
also.
that's. I feel like the scope of this committee is all of a sudden expanded to the scope of something.
But that has kind of been the issue from the outset.
Yeah,
And
so,
I'm sorry that, you just can't ignore
Yeah.
it. So it's fine, but I
no, I don't think we're ignoring it. I'm just saying that I think that this group is, we want to be able to recommend a site for our first, second, third, fourth choices for DPW. So that's why MCA is part of our conversation. Then the select board dealing with DCAM will negotiate. If we can make that happen, what does that mean to the amount of housing that the state is requiring? What does that mean as far as the zoning that we would propose to the town? So that's where that conversation continues. Does that make sense?
Yes, but
Okay.
again, like you point out, it may have implications for other properties and their potential use if Ice Road is gonna be included. So I think everybody understands the conundrum, the issues.
Yeah, and we have the Kaiser Roads cluster right now as the next line items.
Okay,
in this.
let's go.
So, and I think this interconnection piece also referred to is like, okay, if there are two ways to deal with cutting and developable land in MCI. One, if you say, okay, you take X acres more away from developable land. So you either have to stack now what the state's goals on housing are into a
Which we
smaller
don't know.
footprint. Yeah,
Right.
which we
Right?
have to see either in a smaller footprint, which means potential higher or more density, so that's one. Or if you can in negotiations point out or link it to freeing up other properties like Kais, where you say, okay, if that is successful, definitely, you could throw into the negotiations Kais Road as also a housing capacity token into your negotiations and see, can you keep the density within whatever the town wants to have as density as MCI.
But I think the success of this committee in terms of selecting MCI Concord as a site has to follow through with some of that understanding.
Yeah, and that's important. I made notes here that there is the conflict of the housing and development wishes of the state. Yeah, and I think that needs to be well documented.
Okay.
Yeah.
Potentially, yeah.
So that should we do the cluster on Kais Road here in together, or we want to break this out? So if you look at the cluster is, let's do first just the pure EW campus, which are 133 and 135. So the subgroup, a new determination was that that it's not a site to rebuild DPW. That's at least how it reads. So that means that sooner or later, DPW will be relocated somewhere else, wherever that place is. So then the question is what to do with that land. Yeah.
But that's the conclusion. But in the available information we had at the time, I don't think we knew for sure that the land mass, including 141 Kais, would or wouldn't fit a new DPW. We did feel that it would be a very burdensome cost to have to rebuild. So it was a cost issue, rebuilding on that land, having to relocate DPW to where, how long, and then rebuild. So that essentially was the reason, not necessarily just that it was not suitable in that location.
Did you determine that that total cost was significantly greater than cost in some of the other options? Because for the moment, if all those options of the new building, whether it's at MCI or other places that we have to discuss, I'm just wondering why you took Kai's. Kai's is still in the possible use. It's not the first tier, but. And we'll talk about if 141 moves and there's more, I'm just wondering, can we still keep that as an option? Your group says gonna take it off the table because of cost. I'm just wondering.
Yes, but
Well,
I think if you're saying that additional studies need to be done with all of these properties. We didn't have the capacity to, we could look at,
Right.
how much per square foot. Properties cost, but in terms, and we could, also, understand. That the cost would be substantially higher if you had to relocate and then, move back. But the details to that analysis are not well refined.
Yeah, because you had, I'm just
So that's
looking
why I'm
at.
saying if we're doing future studies,
Yes.
a lot of this needs to still
That
be
might be one we want to look
a
at.
little fuzzy. I mean, I think
Yes.
given the information we have. On all of the sites we looked at, all of it is, I think, gives us some relative understanding of rankings, but. They
Yeah.
could be wrong, because we don't have
Agreed.
the rigor.
And important to lay out limitations, not only time, but data and support and so forth. But I think one of the reasons Kai's moved from being sort of in a top priority to a middle priority actually doesn't have anything to do with cost or transferring back and forth. It's the opportunity cost associated with that particular parcel of land being so centrally located, potentially very valuable for the towns to be able to produce some medium density housing that would be transit adjacent and possibly seniors housing. So I think it was the opportunity cost and the highest best use of Kai's that took it off the table or moved it down among, because it could be such a strategic parcel in another use.
And that's what this reconciliation process would tell us. We could understand that. The other issue is, that it has a lot of wetlands, which is not
Yes.
optimal for, that kind
Okay,
of a public
that makes sense.
facility.
So I just pulled up what you had there. So in your table, you had Kaiser listed as the last resort, more or less. With
Yes.
poor size and shape, poor cost and good location. So that was the
Well,
outcome.
it's central
And-
location and, and the neighborhood effects are already in,
Affected.
and
Yes.
if one of the key factors for public works is that nobody wants to be located anywhere near public works, which we're hearing a lot of. It does have to be, to some extent, looking pretty bad before you just move that opportunity to redo that.
Yeah, so should we take in this as, should be noted as, say.
So there's one, sorry, I don't mean to jump in. One thing I just wanted to add on to what Linda was saying is that, we're getting a lot of, I won't say blowback, but a lot of feedback with, locations of DPW. If we were going to go down this path, a lot of the facilities would have to be offloaded from that existing site to other sites throughout town. And I mean, we would face a lot of uphill challenges doing that as well.
So should we add, in our report, we should add some language, that, I'm just right now reading the subgroup report, it reads like this, okay, it's off the table, that's how it reads.
Right.
I heard now something a little bit different.
Well, no, I don't think it's a little different, but I think it's trying to explain.
Yeah.
That, why it wasn't advisable
Mm.
and other things were higher, but again, it would be really wonderful if we knew for sure and certain that MCI was going to go our way, just as you mentioned about what could happen in West Concord for the fire station. And so I think it's important to, not say that we have the luxury of putting all of our eggs in one basket.
But I would keep it as a possible use. I'm just thinking, one scenario that MCI doesn't work, so what's plan B? We're gonna talk about plan B, but, until we talk about other properties, I mean, for the moment, I think it's in a possible category.
I have a process question. Are we going to be rewriting the subcommittee reports? Or are we simply looking for conflicts between, and then anything that we learned during our discussions, wouldn't that go into the other category of our phase 2 work as defined by the select board as far as recommending next steps?
Yeah.
And the next step
Yes.
would be,
But we have
maybe
to,
we really do need to figure out the costs and all the logistics involved in citing DPW where it is. That's a possible,
that's why I'm.
So we're just looking for, are there conflicts that mean we should take things off? But otherwise we leave them on and we have another.
And if it comes online, if it's the plan B of the plan B or whatever,
Yep,
that's saying that it needs to have then a further study and can this still be done at that place?
So I think further studies imply across the board. So
I
further
just wanted
studies
to-
apply. And can I finish quickly, Paul? I think Plan B is baked into this option because it says relocate DPW and sell. And then option 2 is retain all or part of DPW in phase relocation plan, sell in longer term. So to me, that covers a wide variety of options. And I think we're also maybe having some different interpretations of what the word conflict here means, because when I think about conflict across these different sites, I'm looking for conflict in options for one site versus another site. I'm not thinking about downstream potential land use conflicts of a future use, which is, I think, we're sort of moving a little downstream. I think what would benefit us most is to simply say, are the options that are listed under each of these the correct set? Do we want to add anything or take anything off, or do we want to eliminate a particular property or et cetera, right? Rather than trying to imagine a downstream future land use that we do not know at this point and would be pending further study.
I just wanted to mention that, Mary, to your comment.
Yeah.
This is the first time we're discussing this whole report, right? We haven't had a chance to comment on the report, so there may be things beyond sort of the conflict that we may want to suggest for modification, rewriting or something. I just want to leave that
well,
open.
that's why I asked the question, about what's the process here? Are we rewriting or are we rearranging or adding to the recommendations of the subcommittee? Or are we simply looking for places where maybe 2 subcommittees wanted the same piece of property, right? So
That's a conflict.
that's a conflict.
That's really.
And then in this conversation, we're finding out that, hey, the subcommittee might not have thought of
Yeah,
it, but that is something we definitely want to put in the report.
Yes,
Okay.
okay.
Well, it's a massive puzzle piece, right? If not here, then where? And we're trying to figure out where
Yes,
that is.
yes.
And the other thing that we haven't talked about is, briefly, is acquisition. That we are looking at property we own, but as you just said with the fire station, and there could be other opportunity to acquire to put things there as well.
Yes.
So
Okay.
with that, because it's so close by, it's 141 Kaiser Road, which was mainly part of the municipal consolidation plan to consolidate the functions there into the future central situation that is in place. I think we have here a potential conflict in a scenario where we say the town is successful to relocate DPW, let's say to MCI, but is not successful in consolidating town offices.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the Kaiser Road cluster, it's a cluster. It would be most likely highly valuable to just, if you're rezoning and then putting this on the market for housing, to see this as a combined package. So there might be a certain pressure that if DPW is relocated, even though if it if consolidation did not happen, to think about should move these departments somewhere else to have an overall solution for that cluster of properties in that core.
I'm kind of wondering if the yield analysis that's being conducted is the entire Kaiser campus or someone else segmented.
Yes, somehow I have the feeling that
The entire-
town management should separate these out. There's for someone naively walking on that campus, sees it all together. So I think it's important to understand that this is. If I would be a developer, I would look at this thing as a complex and not just as something else. And at least you should have some kind of sentence in there to acknowledge that there is a linkage between the three properties here.
Not sure I completely understand. So are you suggesting that we need to think downstream about whether the parcel is presented as a single parcel or as separate parcels? I tell you, there can be three separate medium density developments on that site. One could be done by a senior housing developer, one could be by market rate, one could be mixed rate, et cetera. So I don't think we need to worry about that. I think that the yield study is gonna give us one very surprising result. It's valuable for housing. So I don't know that we have to worry.
I just think the two work streams have to move together.
Yeah.
That's a comment here.
But you're saying it's highest value would be housing, not for municipal use in terms of moving, making it an annex to town hall.
There, without question, in any municipality in the Boston suburbs, the highest and best use of well-located land is housing.
Even with the historical. Restriction.
Yeah, that's gonna take a slice off the top, but I
But
think
it would
that's,
still be.
yeah. It's not commercial office, that's for sure, it's not retail, and it's not industrial, even though industrial is doing well, but it just doesn't sell at the same price, so it's residential. So I mean,
Okay.
I just don't know how much we have to.
Okay, next one might be a simple one. The pump station, I think, looks like that stays and is not touched. Okay. It's at the office, part of the consolidation. And if consolidated, the proposal was to put that potentially on the market.
It would probably be a rental, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
in whatever form,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, Church Street offices was part of the consolidation. And was either sell or retained for town use.
that's right.
Yes,
Yes.
Well, those are two options. I think it's a high preference for.
okay. Harvey Wheeler was relocated to a consolidation location. And then put on the market or retained for town use, and we got also the letters in the meantime on Harvey Wheeler, and I think there's more coming. Any concerns on Harvey Wheeler? We need to document better or more.
I think it captured what. I thought it just captures what we said. In our report.
It did, but we are seeing significant public commentary.
I think I would highly recommend that if whoever picks up the working stream on the consolidation, that around the Harvey Wheeler consolidation, there will be a need to really explain that to the public.
You're right. Well,
Yeah.
you have here.
And
retained
it
for-
only works if you can show what the.
We're not
where that
deciding.
go.
We're
Yeah,
not deciding this.
Yeah.
You have both options here.
yeah,
That's good
okay,
enough. Where we're at right
good
now,
enough.
That's good enough.
Okay, Knox Trail, public facilities storage. Again, consolidate and put to the market. Or we can.
I think we have some news.
The school's transportation department operates out of that building.
At 37,
On the 37 Knox Trail, they are on the first floor of that building.
Is that because they need to be proximate to the bus storage?
Yeah, and so I think they may be able to be moved to 39, but there's no office space at that
At
location.
30.
Is that a deal breaker in some way that they could not have, even, some kind of modular office space provided on site and then have permanent space in a consolidated option?
Yeah, so the issue with 39 is that it does not have potable water. So that's, there are water tanks that are there for the limited potable water usage that's needed by the staff, but, yeah, that, the water, access to water is an issue there.
Was there market interest in that property?
In 37,
Yeah,
I've heard that there's market interest in 37s.
Okay, so you need to find a place for the school transportation people. So that needs to be in the documentation.
Yes.
Townhouse, retain. And there was also potentially relocate the visitor center, or was that, for sure relocation? I was not 100% sure on that.
I think should we keep this in here, or was that just a relocate it for the visitor center? We also talked about, I think, using it for archives, but.
Yeah. Maybe we just say retain for town use.
Yeah, retain for town use.
Maybe
Yeah.
retain.
Good, we don't have to specify.
I'll take it out.
Yeah. We're not gonna sell the town.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a.
Where can we meet then? Okay, visitor center. It says here retain as visitor. That was again the conflict between the two. It says retain as visitor center, retain public restroom use, and rent small commercial space. Is there anything to rent there?
A little office,
Tiny office.
the little shop and
Is it worth mentioning that or no?
not
Okay.
really.
Alright.
Okay.
Great.
So then the one I hope we get through very quickly is the list of all where we said no change.
Good.
Which is Concord Free Public Library, no change. Paula Branch Library, no change. Edith Center, no change. Hunt Gym, no change. CNLP, no change. Concord Performing Arts Center, no change. Umbrella, no change. Wastewater treatment facility, the main side, so the current one, no change on that one. Then there's some odd lots that are on Kais Road, which are more or less wetlands. So no change on these odd lots. Then the former parking of MCI was for whatever reason on the original list is outside of the scope of us, so that's not touched. Knox Trail Public Facility Storage 39, no change. The Harrington House, no change. Yeah?
Yep.
That was quick, you're done. No. All right, now. Okay, let's go.
The first one.
The first one, 755 Bowden Street composting site. It's our understanding, was that the composting was, I think was in the potential public works site and it was rejected.
Yes, I
Yes.
think both, based on the, the land, in terms of, having, the capped portion of the land was significant, the fact that you're putting in a new, cell tower, and, it's used to some extent, by public works, but moving more public works and taking up more space. Just, and the shape of the land isn't amenable as well. And that's independent of its location near Walden Pond, which was also a concern to the community.
And you had the Bournemouth project presenting at one meeting.
Yes,
Because we received input on their interest to acquire, not the land, but conservation restriction on this. And their proposal was to move to composting to Peter Springfields.
I think they would prefer moving the
Yeah.
proposed
Yeah.
site and,
Yeah.
to any other location.
Yeah.
So I don't know that they
And then the
had any
Springfields one.
particular location in mind, but, yeah.
So I think it's in our final report, I think to be fair, if we received the feedback, we should document that there is a desire from the Water Woods project.
Yeah. Yeah,
As described in the letter.
yeah,
Okay,
document that, sure.
Why is that part of a report?
Hmm?
Why would that be part of a report?
Because
that's public input.
the part of looking at all of their, the phase two, look at all of the available land and
And the interest,
Yes.
yeah.
we categorize it, so it would be a big.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I think Junction Village in a certain way was outside of our scope as such.
Yes.
So the only overlap is for that separate track with Public Works is the sandbeds that reach over to that property for the wastewater treatment facility. So I don't think we need to mention Junction Village in our report unless anyone thinks so.
No.
Yeah. Okay, the community gardens across fire and police, I think is there only on a side comment mentioned at a certain point. There's generally no change anticipated. But it was mentioned as if we need to rebuild fire and police on Walden Street, is there a scenario where you could do it as a swap scenarios, like you're building on that side and give the community garden then on the freed up side for the other thing? We can leave it in there. That was somewhere in the meetings, but the primary thing is no change anticipated.
And
Yeah,
why, I don't remember from the report, why was that not considered a desirable?
Site to begin with, I think,
I mean, it's 4 acres, is it,
4.3.
yeah, so. Then,
so I think, a couple of challenges with the site. First of all, we didn't evaluate in the public safety subgroup, we didn't evaluate every potential site other than the ones that we have because it's so constricted by response time. So if one of the challenges currently is that we have increasing population shift towards West Concord, and we have an inability to meet response time requirements in West Concord, given that population shift. Building a large fire station on Walden Street wouldn't solve the West Concord problems. So the size of the site actually didn't necessarily become a gating item, if you will, because we wouldn't put a really large fire station there in a brand new situation in any event. And then police stations are much smaller footprint. So it wasn't the size of the parcel that would have been attractive. So then we're talking about 6 of one, half dozen of the other, one side of the street, other side of the street. I don't even know, like there's stuff we don't know about whether or not the soil is the same. It's much wetter on the other side of the street. So
I take this.
I think this is a bit of a distraction.
I do.
I worry about this one, yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have the other public community gardens here, and it's it will upset people, so.
I don't, there's not a huge advantage
not.
unless the public safety consultant comes in and sees something that we don't see, which by the way is completely possible.
Some of the bend too, so the danger of coming out of there, an emergency, you wouldn't
Yes.
see it. Like right now, it's on the curb, so you would know when the police are coming out, you would be
Yeah.
coming in, and it would be
Yeah.
more dangerous
Yeah.
actually.
So let's come back to after the next one, because it's the 416 Walden Street, which is more or less right next to it, which has the pump station there, but we cannot use the full 8 acres, I think maximum. What did you say, Alan? It's about 4 acres.
What's that? I'm sorry.
The pumps, the Walden pump station, lot 416.
Oh, that's a, yeah, it's a water protection area that's required around that, so.
Yeah. So it's only that little nose that is used.
It would be sort of a small section towards Alcott School, it could potentially be repurposed.
Yeah.
But, there is a DEP restriction as far as what could happen in what we call a zone 1. That's the water resource protection area.
Yeah. So when I think is when it comes to the situation, say where a new fire/police might be built along on this side of Route 2. I think what is it, 3 acres of that lot of the close to 9 acres of that lot
Could
be potentially location.
Correct.
Yeah.
But would also require is taking water that's presently under, under water use restrictions, it would have to require state, review and approval to dispose of.
How far does the protection go? Because that's right next door to the community garden. Then the protection go.
You know, it's 250 feet from the,
Okay. Yeah.
the Wells Fields is the source.
A lot of acres though, 8.7.
So was that just in this, if you look at these, should we take the community gardens off? So.
Yes.
It could, you know, when they're funding. Is that correct? Is that legal?
Yeah.
If it comes back, you know, if when we hire the public safety folks, they'll kind of take a look at everything, I think, and they can take another quick look at the community gardens if it needs to come into play, but I would suspect that's not gonna be, first choice.
Yep.
But further up the street, I think is certainly fair game, and I think the town is keeping a pretty close eye on any conversations around the courthouse as well, because that could be a bit of a game changer.
So Judith, is that a reason for not taking it off the list? Because
Community garden, I'm fine with community
Take it
gardens
off.
coming off the list, yeah,
it's not gonna come back.
yeah, I agree.
All right, next cluster.
What do they do with the Walden pump station? That's it on?
We leave it on, but make a further, and Alan sends some information, how much is really usable, put that into the final report.
There's like a heavy regulatory lift.
Yeah, but the 200 feet gives you, if you do that, you give it another, I think it's 3 to 4 acres.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Peabody, there's 3 lots. My understanding is that the play fields stay. That was not, and the main building, there is an RFP out or whatever to understand is this salvageable at all, or what's the status on?
I don't,
We're doing.
There is not an RFP out, since it did not rise to the top of the list of the subcommittee as an option. We have not put resources to further exploration into the property at this time.
So is there a different order of these things?
I don't think it's an option at this point.
what,
So for consolidation, it's an option to
could we,
get yield out of it.
well, could we rent this to somebody as is or with? I don't know enough about,
Then you have to bring that to code.
you'd still have to bring it up to code?
We certainly could put a request for proposals out to see if there's interest, and
Right.
we would have to, I guess, negotiate whether or not it would be a tenant's responsibility or the owner's responsibility to address any code issues. It's part of the yield analysis work that is being conducted, but not part of the code analysis work that we had talked about.
So, help me understand, the yield analysis determines or quantifies the value as for specific uses, right?
Sure. The yield analysis is looking at 4 separate properties. One of them is PV. And they're gonna be looking at the value of the land under the current zoning, the value of the land under an alternative zoning scenario, which will be a denser zone. If you have residential B and looking at a planned development district under current zoning tools that are available. And it's also looking at the housing that those alternatives could produce if there were to be a project on the site under the current zoning, under alternative zoning.
So it's looking at the value of the land if it was converted to housing under different zoning scenarios. Okay, so it doesn't consider, it wouldn't tell us what this land might be, this building might be worth if it was. If we asked, say a school wanted to move in there or some other.
No, but there, I mean, there are other tools we could use to understand the market there. And as Carrie mentioned, we could do request for proposals to see, if there are interested parties that would be interested in leasing the space.
Yeah.
But really, all indications are that this is the first property in town that we can actually realize value from through the yield analysis. I don't think it's on the table for municipal consolidation. It was an option that we considered, but certainly something didn't reach any recommendation because of various reasons, including cost, location. So,
but your final recommendation was, it's you bet all dimes on one scenario in municipal consolidation. So this is off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're agreeing.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I think.
I think
you're
here, it sounds like you are.
So we take one out here. So we take municipal consolidation out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I see what.
No, it's not.
You're right,
Plan B.
take that out.
It's not Plan B. Plan B is
Yeah.
not that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So that's a major change here. Yeah. We said the plane should stay. So the septic side. That was a bit unclear. Or
It stays. I mean, there's.
yeah. So
I think it's part of value of the property, whether that's just, I think that system can support 102 bedrooms or something like that, according to the Board of Health. I mean, it'd have to be inspected and.
Yeah, I wonder if that, is that part of the yield analysis, do you know? If they evaluate the septic capacity of,
It's not to evaluate the septic.
yeah, but to determine the value of the land, they would have to figure out, do they need to build a septic? Is there a septic? Do they have sewer hookup? I mean, so is
It'll be
it?
considered at a kind of a higher level.
Yeah, it'd have to be.
okay.
Okay, so. We did it in.
2229 Main. So that was.
It's there, we don't know it yet.
So it's there,
It'd be
but we
great
don't
if
have
it-
use for it.
Well, not. In this analysis, none of the three groups said. I mean,
Okay, so we are okay with
it's
the
outside
wording.
the scope,
We are okay with the wording here.
what does it say?
Not considered for regulation for public safety, DPW, or municipal office consolidation.
Yeah.
Return future use issue to select board.
No, I don't know. We don't know enough about it to know what it's considered a priority location for or not. I think we should,
Well, we just know that none of the groups thought there was a. I mean.
yeah, but this statement is saying something different. It's saying it's not a priority according to this group, because it's so far out there. But I'm worried that if we keep this in here, we're saying that a group of people thought hard about it and they don't think it's a priority location for any of these uses, and I'm not willing to go that far.
So should we just make a return future use?
Yes, I'd be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so just point two.
yeah,
Return future use issue to select board.
Great.
Done.
As long as the two select board members agree with that.
Well,
Can we do that with everything?
well, it's two votes.
Okay, again, vicinity of the Kaiser Road cluster, but this is private property,
take it out.
we take that out.
Yep.
Vicinity of West Concord, fire station, so these are. I think, again, private properties, from my understanding from being part of the, group is, it's mainly the properties of interest for the town that are behind the the fire station.
You know, I think this is really important information for the group that takes the public
Yes.
safety and runs with it, okay? But it's not owned by the town,
Exactly.
so it's not really part of the phase two charge of the community.
I was gonna ask you a silly question, whether this is publicly known, but.
But it is.
I mean, I haven't seen this in print yet, so this is
Well,
it.
it was in the report from the
Yeah.
public safety subgroup, but I agree, and we haven't really heard anything
From the property.
from the
owners.
property owners. They haven't been calling up and saying.
They're waiting there, waiting for the big check.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the same on the other one, the main, all of these, okay. Then school board sites, Ripley School.
Yeah.
So at the moment,
If there was a DPW possibility.
there's a DB double possibility.
Yeah.
And there was the recommendation for the municipal conservation group to, when that is vacated, to convert that to housing instead.
Yes.
So there's a
conflict.
There's a conflict.
But beyond that, should we take this off because of the yield? Now, we took up Kai's Road, I heard, because of the potential yield. Kai's Road, for housing. That's certainly true for Ripley. It's not, besides the other issues that have come into play. Conflict in community, but the yield for Ripley is substantial. So
You're right.
I would say just take it up for that, for that reason.
Take that for
Paul, can I just chime in?
Yes.
Kai's Road, even though this discussion is not taken off the table, it's the bird in the hand, which isn't ideal. It's the last of, taking off the table is different than
Okay.
low priority, that's all.
I misspoke, you're right.
Yeah.
But I'm saying the yield analysis from with some of those properties are really pretty important, especially this one.
So I think we're okay leaving it on here. I think the yield analysis will show us that this is not an attractive option, and it was in the subcommittee's recommendation.
So it was.
So do we see it as a real conflict or is, let's say, because for DPW to use it, it has to be vacated in the first place.
Right, so it's
So
not a
it's-
conflict, because municipal consolidation hasn't vacated.
Yeah,
Okay, then what? And then it leaves for, I guess, several different options.
so but then we should have it here that this is a consolidation target. We haven't documented that in here.
No, it's not a consolidation target.
It's a-
No, it's not. It's not a consolidation target. It's a consolidation.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's a candidate to consolidate
Yes,
somewhere
It's
else.
being made available.
Yeah, so that was the first, after that, it's then on the list for DPW or sell.
Right, I think that's captured here, but
Yeah, okay.
is that correct? Am I reading it the same way everybody else is?
No, we have main that when it's something is getting relocate or something like that. Relocate current uses as part of municipal consolidation plan. That was really designed, no, for others, other buildings.
Sorry, I'm not following you, Sven. Sorry, I'm slow today.
So on other buildings, then we said needs to be relocated as part of the consolidation plan. We had spelled that out. Here we are not spelling out.
Oh, I see what you mean, the existing school use, the
Yeah.
school admin uses.
Yes, so that comes first, because without the relocation of the school use, you can't do the other options.
Right. That's right.
So these, but that's, it's sort of like it's not an option, it's an assumption.
Yeah, so therefore we spell it out.
So
Consolidation.
I guess I have a comment, on the DPW, the group activity. So this is a property that certainly we haven't had community input yet. Right?
Yeah.
But we can anticipate it's gonna community, I mean, we just haven't had it. And likewise, we didn't have, and we'll talk about Peter Springs, we didn't have community input on that yet. So I'm just thinking ahead, should we think ahead? That this may not be the greatest site for DPW, or should we just leave it there because we don't have the information?
I think you're gonna get community input certainly, we haven't had a lot of community outreach, so we don't know, but the community input for any DPW site is going to exist, except perhaps, and even with MCI Concord, because people were not jumping up and down when the consultants presented all the scenarios of what wonderful things that could go on there. They weren't jumping up and down and asking for DPW to be cited there as well. So, you know, I think that you know, again, unless, well, I don't know how
How do we
to
deal with
say.
this inevitable?
Agree. You're right, I was gonna jump up and down, but I just wanna clarify something. When the vision report came out, and you're right, nobody jumped up and down, but also the vision report didn't point out the wastewater treatment plant there and the buffer that was required. So people were blindsided. I just wanted to clarify that.
Right.
But your point is well taken, that nobody jumps up and down. Put the DP, except here, because we're used to it. I mean,
Right, which is the amazing thing, because
once you get
it's
used,
it's right down the street
right,
and nobody complains.
right.
I mean, have you ever heard a complaint
No.
about,
Because
you know,
their condition.
you know, and if, you know, we toured other sites, you know, Lexington has their site. There was nothing there when they moved there, and now they're building all around it. There's housing right up against that, the perimeter of that building. It's amazing.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I keep thinking of all the 2 and 3-year-old little boys whose bedrooms will be overlooking that site. And that's gonna be in Nirvana, you know?
The issue with DPW is unique, we have a,
Selling point.
we have 9 acres, like you need 9 acres, right? So when we're taking this off, we have to look at the properties that have the location to have 9 acres to do it. And as, you know, this whole idea of bird in hand, it would be an ideal place for housing, but no one's gonna be like DPW here. So we're just providing a lot of opportunity for the select board to take, and if we're taking things off, just be like not recommended, but still a possibility because of the locality of it.
So
It's important to know that it goes to the select board to decide.
Yeah, right, without a doubt.
So
And giving you guys options to do so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
in the complex decision path, coming to your question is, here in the end, it would be suddenly, the Ripley School would be a potential location for DPW. Whoever is making the decision will face a lot of public.
Yes, I don't know if it's in the scope of this group to anticipate,
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
but you know. I think we have learned that not anticipating one of the properties. We've got a lot of pushback. Right,
That's to be expected.
okay, it's expected, but we should expect it here, and do we ignore that, or do we just
No.
say it's up to the select board?
Well, we're not making decisions, right?
Making recommendations based on best available information.
Okay, right, exactly, exactly.
So that
So,
includes community input, best available information. I guess that's my question.
it includes select community input. It does not include, we don't have broad community input. We have very specific community input. We haven't gone broadly and said, we need a new place for DPW. We want to hear from everybody.
Well, we heard community input from one property. We haven't heard
That's right.
community input from this property.
No, we saw it.
Well, this property, if you want to know the concerns, it's right by playing fields, right?
Yeah.
So you do have the issue of a lot of wonderful playing fields that are gonna have a lot of kids around them. And then you're gonna have, you know, all these big trucks and transit and transportation up and down the road.
The little boys will be
Is it a name?
Little girls like heavy.
Very.
Oh, man,
Word is in town and how you're getting more of a central area where ties is.
Right, and it's not a great central area, it is, so and you do have a butters, and there's concerns with, you have the one road in, one road out situation, you don't have an, you know, if Miriam Road has a problem, it's gonna be hard to get a lot of big trucks in and out and you don't have a second group right now that isn't a neighborhood group, so you're gonna have agita from the neighbors and from the recreation groups, and you
Yes.
anticipate that, and there's nothing wrong with that.
That's right. That's
Yes,
right.
but why should that be a recommendation of this group, given what we know? I mean, yes, we can recommend the select board and they could hear.
If you want just one
Yes.
recommendation, fine,
Take, right,
just take one recommendation and
On
go with
land that we
it.
don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
So,
but I
Paul,
guess
just-
we
it's
didn't
interesting
think
with
that
the-
was
I'm
our
just wondering whether,
mandate.
whether it's in the scope of our
Yeah,
efforts.
so just understand, the decisions of looking at why that land, because it's owned by the town of Concord. That's primarily the reason. Why the wastewater treatment plant? Because one, it abuts the wastewater treatment plant. Two, it's under the control, and it was for wastewater. So anyone who bought and developed around there, developed around a parcel, it was strategically set aside for municipal use for exactly what's being proposed. What's happened over the past 30 years, since I've been here, is an evolution of activity on that campus. And I will share, I remember signing off a temporary lease to use for agriculture, saying, this is interesting, but I'm just telling you, things evolve, but the group is stuck with the options that exist. And that's all we have, and whether the prioritization is what you're talking about. But if you take things off, you know, it's like private development, they do things by right. The challenge with municipal land is you don't really operate that way, you do things by desire and public interest. What we're hearing is there's no place for public works, so there's a lot of public interest to have it come to us. But if you don't put that on the plans, you're doing a disservice to the general populace, because you just need to identify the sites, and if everybody can agree to maybe that's why we really want to go in and support one location, you need public will to do that. They have to have a voice.
So we get to that one later, but if we have the time. But,
Yeah, and let me just complete my.
yeah.
This criteria, I'll call community, input or community considerations. Should that be part of our criteria, or maybe as you suggest, we leave that for later time?
I don't think we didn't do broad community.
We did not, but we're encouraged, we're crystal balling some of this is reality in front of us with previous meetings, so. I just wonder what
If
to
we
do with
took
that.
Berkeley up, because we're afraid the neighbors and.
Then we'd have to take everything.
Peter Springs up, because we're afraid, then we're left with DCAM, which I think is, everybody wants, well, not everybody. I think a lot of people are behind that, but we don't control that. So we have to, I think we need to at least show other options. In this report, knowing very well and saying very clearly that we really want the DCAM, the primary recommendation of that subcommittee, we are behind that. And that would be one of our priorities when the select board negotiates with DCAM. I think that's where we're landing, and we can do that without removing things from consideration.
That could galvanize support for that place too, because they're like, well, if it's not gonna be in my backyard, I wanna push for something positive, so it actually can effectively help Concord, because people will be so eager to put it there, they don't want it in their backyard.
So, yeah, if I can, a couple of points. First of all, the history of citing public works is very much one of, you put public works somewhere where there aren't neighbors who don't object to it, and then things tend to grow up around it. Right, so that's very much the history of public works. The second thing is, I think with regard to Paul's very important point about consulting with the community, I mean, this really, whenever the statement comes up, is it within our scope? The answer is generally going to be no, because we were so constrained. But the idea that we would be able to design and accommodate a meaningful public participation process was not in the cards at the beginning of this process. It remains not in the cards to be able to do that. So we're getting piecemeal feedback on an informal basis. But I think we want to be very careful about how we use words like select public input, because that almost sounds like there's some preferential treatment, and I want to simply take that off the record. It was not within the scope of a volunteer board looking at over 50 properties to be able to have a meaningful public input process. And I think That comes in the next stage. So just being very clear about that, and I do not think we can design any kind of meaningful public input other than what's happening informally into the process before we finish our work as a land use working group. But I think the select board will carry that through and have meaningful conversations as we move forward. The last thing I want to mention is that, Alan makes a point that I think has been reinforced in our conversations, which is we use this puzzle piece metaphor. Sven is the king of metaphors, right? This idea that we're trying to look at puzzle pieces and moving them around. We have our puzzle piece box only included a set of properties that are already largely either owned by the town or adjacent to properties that are owned by the town or possible acquisitions by the town. So if I were coming to this as somebody who's been doing land use planning for 25 plus years, and I was trying to identify a site for public works in the town of Concord, I would be looking at every site.
Yep.
And by the way, there are plenty of commercial sites that are in commercial areas or industrial areas that would be far more well suited than some of the existing properties. So we have a very circumscribed set of questions here that I think we've answered as well as anybody, intelligent people who love the town and know the town. We've answered them as well as we can. Now we move it back to the select board and we move into a higher level of analysis and consideration and refinement and input. So I think it's important to keep that in mind.
Okay. So these options described here, I think we can still leave it in even as it is. Yeah.
That's we're on Ripley and Bear. Are we still on Ripley or have we moved?
You're still on Ripley.
Yeah. Yes, we'll leave it in.
We
So let's keep them. We have a time constraint.
Okay, so then I have this was on the list. Personally, I have no idea about the discussions around the Barrett's Mill parcel. It's a Concord Public School property. It's leased for agriculture and
I think that goes into the third list.
Yeah.
I did too.
Bucket three.
Okay, bucket three. So vicinity of Ripley, there again, agricultural fields nearby.
Yep.
That are, some of them actually don't show the zoning, some of them are actually zoned residential B, if I recall correctly. So I think there's no active kind of recommendation to use it for any of the subgroups. So at the moment, it seems to be continued leasing for cultural use, but it could be, and I heard rumors, I heard people saying some developers might have interest, but this is something outside of our work here. Yeah. But
it's interesting.
These are still, these are 12 and 11 acres.
That's interesting. I'm glad you did this. I wasn't aware of this.
Yeah. And even for, let's say, if you think about, we're not listing this here, what about affordable housing? Projects. Okay, wastewater treatment plant, Bedford Road. They're coming to the end here.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So first, the wastewater treatment property itself, we had up on the list. We already treated that. Then we have the sand beds that are close by. These are the sand beds we looked at when we toured on December 4th. I think they remain for future reuse. It's important for the town to increase our capacity potentially. So that although that is a more expensive solution, it should be clearly retain these for future capacity expansion.
Okay, wait, we've got sand beds next to our existing wastewater treatment plant that we could expand capacity.
Yes.
And why are we doing that?
Cost. They're super expensive.
Super expensive.
So that is, if you can correct me if I understand it correctly, is so they're decommissioned for years, they have to be brought back to shape. You have to change the treatment process of the water in the current wastewater treatment facility to be able to discharge this. There's a big difference to the treatment facility and the sand beds at MCI, which is already set up in a treatment process that we can use what is there for discharge and sandbeds. So the cost, last one was 10 million or so to do this.
Well, it's about 13 million.
So
This is in our existing facility.
Yeah, which is, they have several factors more expensive than sandbeds at MCI.
But
And
don't we need even more capacity than MCI?
Yeah, but then you have to increase the sewer connection fee to what, $150, $160, or you want to do that?
So Mary, it's a question of when we make the
I'm sorry, I'm
investment.
getting off
Yeah,
track a
no,
little bit.
really, it's when we're not going to spend $13 million.
Yeah.
Until we get a consent order from EPA to say you've exceeded your capacity. That's gonna give us a couple of years.
Okay,
We're not there,
okay,
but when we get a consent order, we have to offer
Got it.
legitimate, what are we doing? That'll be our offer.
okay.
And this would be the most expensive solution. Just
Okay.
keep that in.
The permitting issues too.
Yes.
Okay.
but I guess the question is, if we need a public works department today, are we just housing this for 2050? I mean, sort of, when is the realistic timeframe when we would actually need to implement this, and could we realistically get the permitting that would provide it? You know, again, given that no one wants a public works department in their neighborhood. This isn't in anybody's neighborhood other than the public works department, and should we be, kind of land banking this?
I think
Is that the highest use of this land for the community, is to land bank this? I don't know the answer to that.
I'm sorry, right now we're talking about.
So if
The
you,
city-
so if I understand you correctly, yeah, so
This-
the sandbed, if you kind of, you put the question out is, should we give up the potential of sandbeds to place DPW there?
Yes,
it's not big enough,
7 acres?
not really needed.
I have no, I mean.
Yeah.
It's sort of, the acreage seems to move around. here.
Yeah,
The value of increasing.
And it depends
wastewater
on,
capacity.
Didn't you just kind of assess that though? That's our
so
future
why,
That's our
response.
so
future.
did
Yeah.
you not discuss that in the
Yeah.
group, so this is,
We never
yeah,
got anywhere
Okay.
other than we have, we have to have these sand beds for future use. They're reserved and they're sacrosanct.
Which they are presently.
so. Do we feel, and again, I'm not just the MC here, do we feel as the group to say this should be added to say if as a theoretical or option to consider if nothing works, if there's kind of every location falls apart.
Or
Yeah.
if it's just something we put on the list for the
Time to
consultant
retire.
to review.
But the capacity for wastewater, I mean, are we talking 5 years or 20 years? We're talking 5 years, right? 5 or 10 years that we're gonna get this consent order. Isn't that what we're talking about?
Not
That this is the solution to?
I
Not
mean, we
necessarily.
do not control that. I think it could be next year, it could be 10 years. It's something.
But it's not 20, okay.
But we've
It's coming.
attempted to get it.
We know we've been
past.
at the max already. We've already exceeded it. And we fortunately did not get called to do something, so it's always a very nebulous. When is there gonna be an exceedance that EPA determines? That's not the town's decision.
But now I have to ask the turtle question, sorry. It's how are the turtles coming from the Peter Springfield two boards to?
Oh, you're talking about the turtles now?
So it's not, it's sorry,
Just for the interest, the sand beds
yeah,
were a prime location.
yes,
For the
Yeah.
turtles.
Yeah.
It's what sort of, they would
Exactly.
nest, and the intermittent use of them for wastewater.
Yeah.
They prefer, they would then extend beyond that, they extended into the Peter Spring Road neighborhood, wherever there's sandy soil. They don't follow any of our geopolitical mapping.
Yeah.
Their highest and best uses.
Their highest and best use is sand, they can find in the world.
So with respect to the third question, we would run into the same challenges on these properties.
Oh, we guarantee you'd have an argument about the landing turtles if we disturbed it for something other than, say, groundwater discharge.
Yeah.
And we could do groundwater discharge likely without upsetting rare and endangered species, but there would be some mitigation. If we did building, it would be the same kind of interest that's expressed over in the ag field. That'd be the same concern.
Yeah, I think that's here, we have to reserve these sand bits for future waste works. So
Yeah,
whether that happens
right.
next year.
Yeah.
You know, we have to figure out
Exactly.
capital issue, this is an important asset for us. It's arguably more important than where the fiscal DPW goes. So I would say this is
option value, right?
reserved,
It's reserved, and I think that was
this is reserved.
Yeah.
that was part of the decision.
Okay, so we keep what we have here. Yeah, review future reuse of sand flats for increased sewer capacity.
Yes.
The only option documented here.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
okay? Yeah. All right, so now, 40W and 40R, let's talk about them together. These are the Peter Springfield, together they are 20+ acres. And we got expensive feedback from the public. We have here right now as option, number 1, continue leasing for agricultural use. 2, expand DPW footprint. 3, sell part or all. 4, other option not yet identified, in brackets, possible heritage site. I think on the background, these 2 fields are also sold as residential B. Just to have that in mind, 21 acres residential B. Also having, I think, in mind is DPW or any other things, potentially housing use or whatever people might have when you think about sell part or all, doesn't need to be the full part. So if you would take 9-ish acres for DPW, you still have 11 acres there. Or if you're taking 3 acres for housing, you still have 18 acres, 17 acres left. So, these fields are so big that you don't have to necessarily think about them as just one big block. I want to keep that in mind. Nevertheless, you all heard the input. We got extensive parts here. We have extensive letters, people outspoken. I personally think these fields are a accumulation of many potential conflicting interests. Sell value of 21 acres residential B alone is 30 million-ish in dollars plus tax revenue. But that's just the bean counter view to it.
Getting $1 a year right now.
Yeah.
So that's
You're getting $340 a year, something. $340 a year. So, but there's always more than just the bean counterpart, but it's a complex property. Yes. So how do we want to do them? What is the group thinking in? So far from the recommendations that are here, is this something we can live with when this is in this order, how it's documented? Is it something you want to change? Is it something we got more information and want to address differently?
I like the way it's written here, actually. I'm just speaking personally. I would like to keep it as agricultural land forever. because you never get it back, and I think with the state is losing agricultural land every year. So I think it's important that we do what we can to maintain that, but I also think that we're also looping back to the argument we had before about DPW. And do we just put DCAM, or do we keep the other options that we had there? And so I'm happy with this list, which is and the way you've ordered it, which is agricultural, expand DPW footprint, because that was one of the recommendations. We've got recommendations, we've got, DPW at MCI, and then we've got a big, long space, and then way down here is, Peter Springs Road, and then even further down, right there is Ripley. So I'm happy with this particular way of listing our options here. I would maybe take out cell part or all, but
I would say either, so right now this exists in the report as what, the second possible use? There's.
Yes.
Yeah, so I would, if you want to keep it on the list and come to the select board, I would downgrade it to the next level down, or I take it off the list. Give it
Downgrade here in this text.
downgrade, but
what in the report,
Downgraded from priority
Oh,
or
yeah.
referred to
referred to,
whatever the second level was.
what are we talking about? We're talking about
If
DPW?
you, we are talking about if you stack the DPW locations up.
Yes,
Yeah, right now the report had in one bucket MCI,
yep,
Peter Springfields and
Yep.
Ripley School.
right. Okay, so
So
you're saying maybe to
So
put a
second
greater
one.
distance between our
Yeah.
first recommendation and.
I think that's the
second
least we
and
can
third.
do, the least we can do given the public comments, that to put greater distance in between it.
But yeah, that's what I was saying.
yeah,
Yeah, I thought so, but I guess I didn't.
Then I agree with her.
yeah, but I think it's a bit.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You don't like,
No, I would just say, you have a number of constituents that you're dealing with here. And obviously, the residents are the most important of all. But we're also dealing with DCAM. And you just have to figure, in terms of your negotiations, is the positioning, what positioning you would like as well. And I think that was one reason perhaps that it seemed like it might be a good idea to have options.
that is a great point, Linda. That is a great point.
Well, I don't get into negotiation strategy.
I don't either.
But-
And so I
But, you know, we
think I'll
could have,
just,
we could have options,
can
but not
just-
specified options.
I think we know the feeling, I know we know the feeling of
Yeah,
this community, we know the feeling of the community. But I do think, we need, I don't know, I think what you just said is really important to take into consideration. And
I'm happy for you to do whatever you want. But I just, I
that was a
think
good,
that
that was a good,
so an issue.
I,
I'm just touring on this, so I can see both. I could argue both positions, in the debate
Yeah.
club, I really could.
yeah,
But then I just don't, it's well, we've heard a lot about community input and criticisms, lack of public input, and it's not in our scope. But, we are.
Can I throw?
We're trying to make good recommendations.
Can I throw one more thing on this? Yeah, this somehow this correlates all on these two properties. Is what we haven't discussed in the overall picture. If we sell Peabody, if you're selling Ripley, and suddenly we have I don't know, the Lexington effect where MBTA zoning or other zoning changes drive development over and above what we think. Do we need reserve property somewhere? We haven't really thought about a reserve property in case we need to suddenly rebuild the schools.
2229. I'm serious. Leo's. That's a nice property to have in reserve.
That'll be hard,
So you wanna have public input?
that would be hard to build a school at a super.
That's a distracting example.
Oh, that would be.
Well, it's not part of the.
Nobody wants to talk about rebuilding a school.
Yes, it
Yeah, no, but this came up in discussion of, from one of your colleagues from Select Board, does the town need to have a reserve property somewhere?
Mhm.
It is one of the three bigs, do we need to keep one of them as a pre-reserve property?
Right.
And we haven't, we don't need to solve it today because we have 4 o'clock, which should be our end. But keep that in mind somewhere. I would also say is when we look through this, we should definitely make sure that we document around these 2 fields.
Yes.
The
Two
extensive,
Fields comes to mind, right?
yeah, the extensive public input we got. The last property here, just I think we can take that out because this is wetlands. The 49A Bedford, that's not usable at all, it's gonna be just taken off. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you make 2 important points, Sven. The first is the town needs a land management strategy, and I think one of the things about this slightly messy, but still, I think, very useful exercise that we've done over the last year is that it's become very apparent that we need to do more master planning instead of doing reactive work when we need a specific need. So I think that's been very clear. I think also, relevant to these 2 parcels, and relevant also to, I think, one of the comments from the neighborhood group, is that any of these choices would have to go through several layers of approval and considerations, one of which, of course, is environmental assessments and approvals from both, town level, state level, so on and so forth. And I think one of the misleading things that was in some of our writing, which I think we can improve as we move to the final report, is that we use the word minor considerations and major considerations. And I think that was meant on our part to reflect the fact that there were some things that we could think about because we have the data, and some things that we couldn't think about because we didn't have the data. And environmental fell into this minor consideration, and it reads as it wasn't an important consideration, but in fact, it was really just trying to reflect the fact that in this particular stage, because we had no data, and we weren't able to speak to experts, that we weren't able to think about it in a meaningful way, as opposed to it being an incredibly critical consideration. So all of these issues will come into play in a town master planning strategy, including the degree to which we land bank. We do not want to sell every one of these acres as quickly as we can to do a fire sale on supporting some important capital improvement projects. So we want to think carefully about it, and I would urge the neighborhood also to keep in mind that land is zoned residential. So in a new master planning strategy, that should be reconsidered, because one of the reasons it fell into the process in the first place was that it was not zoned in a manner that would suggest it needed a set aside from an environmental point of view. So all of these things I think will come out in the final report. We will definitely be noting, and I think we could think of it as neighborhood reaction, or likelihood of neighborhood opposition in a separate column, right? That might be a way of trying to.
What we've heard so far from a limited
Sort of informal,
representation.
I think we say
Informal
informal.
is great.
Yeah, so.
Well, to your point about not environmental consideration, NRC determination of some of these properties would be.
Absolutely correct. Yeah, we just didn't have it, we didn't have
I
time.
just wanted, you mentioned excess reserve for schools, reminding that Barnesville Road, the school owns 8 acres.
That's right. It's on the list.
That's true.
It's an 8-acre
good.
property.
Good, yeah,
Right there, on the
Because
Strawberry
school-
Hill Road.
Yeah.
good.
Exactly, good.
You haven't got it.
So what's the next step?
So we have to look back on a new chart. Or a new charter, to see, okay, what exercise we did here, what are the holes, we both have to see what the path is for next time. Again, there's this kind of strange list of long properties, I don't think we have to spend this long time around these. This is something we can prepare as the co-chairs as kind of the structured way of looking at some of them, and that you're aware of it, you can have a certain discussion around it, but this is putting in there in kind of the task that's been, according to the new charter for whoever comes later. But we have a documentation of more, and then, we have to get to a draft to summarize that in a wording that everyone can review and chime in.
I'm ready to draft.
So
Yeah.
can you just quickly outline for me what the draft report? What's the outline of the draft report?
We can do that at the top of the next meeting.
Okay, that would be
Probably off the top of my head, but yes, I think that's what we do at the next meeting, in fact, we had some slides, I was just trying to see if I could bring up the slide, but. I think, let's think about what the outline is, Sven and I will come with something for us to sort of riff off of, and then once we have some agreement about what the report will look like and maybe the scope, and we can talk about appendices and what information we might want to include, then I think we draft.
I think the rewritten charge will give you a lot of
Yes.
direction around the outline of the final report that's expected, so I think that's the starting point.
That's exactly where we have to go back.
One mention, one other thing we might want to consider for a discussion before we expire. So if and when Article 12 passes and they're.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out scopes of work, tasks that need to be done as part of that work. Yeah, we alluded to some of that.
Not this group.
No, well, right, but it reckons it's a logical offspring of sort of the gaps that come out of this group that are gonna feed into what we need to do to fill these gaps.
Yeah, but the new charge has it on to develop.
Oh, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying, so suggestions, we need suggestions about what are those areas where the scopes of work.
That's exactly what was in
Yeah.
the charge, yes.
Yeah, we have to develop next steps for selectment consideration background and so on.
Oh, that's what that was.
That was.
Yeah, you
We
defined
wrote
that.
down.
All of that.
I did.
Who approved that?
You.
You.
We didn't read it.
I read it,
Okay.
you know.
Okay,
Yeah.
are we ready to adjourn?
Are we ready?
public comment.
This is a working session and we have public input in the beginning. Yeah, please.
For about items that were not on the agenda and that.
No, that was not this time how it was.
Okay, I will write to the group.
Okay,
Thank you, and I will do all I can for pushing to it.
so you can bring in that public input at the beginning of the next meeting.
No, I will write to the groups, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, we ready to adjourn? Yes?
Yes, so moved.
Okay, 4:07 PM.